Kia ora and welcome to Talking Dairy. I'm Jack McGowan from DairyNZ. In this episode, we've got a quick update about DairyNZ's recent submission on the National Freshwater Framework under the Resource Management Act reform. We've worked closely with farmers, scientists and experts and shared a clear message with government. DairyNZ's Principal Policy Advisor, David Cooper, is here to explain what we said, why, and what it could mean for your farm. Let's get straight into it, David. What is the National Freshwater Framework and how does it affect dairy farmers?
Yeah, so when the Coalition Government came in, they said very clearly they were going to review the Resource Management Act. That's that 34-year piece of legislation that everyone agrees needs to be fixed. As part of that process, they're reviewing all of the existing national direction, including national direction relating to freshwater. So that includes the National Policy Statement, which is the overarching national direction around freshwater management, and also includes specific national directions that apply to all regions and all farmers, including the nitrogen cap on synthetic nitrogen fertiliser, intensive water grazing rules, freshwater farm plans, all of those regulations that apply nationally. Government are also looking to be more enabling around some of these activities. So taking directions that have traditionally been applied by regional councils and turning them into national directions so they apply everywhere in an effort to ensure consistency and reduce costs. It'd be fair to say these regulations have huge implications for farmers. So the permitted activity standards farmers are working with, the consents they're required to get for day-to-day farming activities, what activities will be addressed through farm plans and what will require consents, and even fundamentally the roles of a regional council in setting the regulations, whether those are set at a national or regional level.
And so what are the key points that DairyNZ made in their submission?
Our submission was very focused on setting out a good scientific framework for assessing the environmental outcomes regional councils required to deliver and how they go about delivering those, so really building on our internal technical expertise. So we were really conscious of the fact that this will be the fifth iteration of national policy direction when it eventually lands since 2010. So our focus was to look for some really long-term solutions that supported and enabled good farming, both at the farm and the catchment level. We wanted the overarching national policy direction, the objectives of that policy direction to ensure regional councils consider the social and economic impacts of regulation a little more when they're developing those regional plans. We also want a more pragmatic and practical approach regarding the processes for regional councils to decide when and where improvements are required in freshwater. So refocusing on recognising existing land uses that are happening in a catchment and ensuring that regulations are realistic and tailored to each of those catchment areas. In terms of the science specifically, we wanted to switch to prioritising outcomes that need to be achieved, not just focusing on putting a number on contaminant limits and assuming those numbers will deliver on the outcomes. Our science tells us there is often a poor correlation between contaminant limits set at the catchment and farm level and the actual outcomes, environmental and human health outcomes that regional councils and communities are trying to achieve.
Can you give us an example of the sorts of outcomes that you're talking about?
So, for example, you will have regional councils looking at nitrate limits in waterways on the basis that they need those nitrate limits to deliver abundant fish, good in-stream values, a lack of slime and periphyton, as they call it. But our science tells us that often just pulling on that contaminant limit lever doesn't deliver those outcomes. So you really need to do a little more. You need to target what is happening in that catchment, consider all the complex factors and pull the right levers rather than just deciding that, if we reduce nitrate, it's going to deliver on those outcomes. And our science is fairly strong on that. So it's something that we really focused on.
Thanks, David. And how did farmer feedback shape the submission?
Yeah, that's really important. So I should note that once the government changed, we knew there would be a change in resource management and national freshwater policy. And we knew what farmers didn't like and under the previous national direction, the 2020 National Policy Statement. So we've been preparing this sort of positions for almost 6 years since that 2020 direction landed. And that included understanding the issues we're facing on the ground. In the actual consultation process, we engaged directly with levy payers through 4 online webinars where we explained the process and our proposed response. And we got feedback from farmers, direct feedback from farmers on whether those responses were what farmers wanting to see. That was really useful for us, both in terms of ensuring we were on the right track with our initial positions, but also underlining the need for farmers and catchment groups to be better recognised, what they were doing on the ground, promoting those good actions that we know deliver on good outcomes. There was also a very, very clear sentiment that came through around farmers being conscious of their social licence, and that we were able to reflect that in our submission. So that included at some points getting feedback from farmers that they didn't want to see a reduction in the rules because it would be seen as being too enabling for farmers. What they actually wanted to see was those rules being reshaped so they were able to be implemented more practically and give some thought to how farmers would best deliver, rather than just having a standard process that didn't work for farmers. And of course, we talked to our experts around and the farm systems science, our regional teams, around what they were hearing, what they think needed to occur, and what farmers were feeling out there as well. So we've summarised farmer feedback in the submission. I'd really encourage farmers to go and have a look at that. I would say it's rather extensive, so you might need 4 or 5 cups of coffee, but it does have a bit of an overview of the farmer feedback we received in our submission, because we think that is important for decision makers to understand.
And farmers can read the full submission and stay updated at DairyNZ.co.nz/freshwater. Okay, David, what happens next and how can farmers stay in the loop?
Yeah, so to answer the second question first, stay in the loop, keep an eye out for the government consultation process, keep an eye on our website. What will happen next in terms of process is the government are proposing to put out specific national policy directions with specific wording in October. So what that will mean is DairyNZ will go through, review those and provide specific feedback on that wording. We also want to engage with farmers over that process. So if you keep an eye on our website, we will come back to farmers when those national policy directions are drafted and released for consultation. And we will look to engage with farmers directly around what is proposed and what our response will be. So please stay in touch with your regional DairyNZ teams and also keep an eye on that website.
Okay, and you said that wording is likely to come out in October. When is consultation expected to close?
It's generally 6 weeks to 2 months. There is a minimum standard of, I think it's about 4 weeks, but government, I think, will be quite generous on this. They do want to have it in place by mid-2026, so there are some fairly tight timeframes. So we'd hope, and we are looking to ensure that the consultation process for that second round will be fairly extensive. I'd expect it to be 6 to 8 weeks.
Thank you, David. And thanks for tuning in to this episode of Talking Dairy. If you'd like to know more, we'll link to the web pages mentioned in this episode at the end of the show notes. Mōrī ora. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Talking Dairy. Make sure to hit follow so you can keep up to date with our latest episodes. You can also keep up with DairyNZ News on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn, or go to our website and sign up for our fortnightly DairyNZ News emails. As always, if you have any feedback on this podcast or have some ideas for future topics or guests to have on the show, please email us at talkingdairy@dairynz.co.nz. Mā te wā, mōrī ora, catch you next time.